What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fit to Fat to Fit Experience podcast. It's me, Drew Manning, your host. Thanks so much for tuning back in today for another great episode. Today I have on one of my friends. Actually, he's a really cool guy, and I've been actually wanting to have him on for a while. His name's Dr. Jacob Wilson, and he is, I've met him at a couple of different keto conferences, and we've had the opportunity to chat before in person. He was out here at FitCon. Anyways, he is Dr. Jacob Wilson. He's got his PhD, CSCS as well. He's the CEO and director of Applied Science and Performance Institute in Tampa, so ASPI. He's also known as the Muscle PhD on social media. You definitely have to check out some of his social media posts. He posts some really good content. He's published over 150 peer-reviewed papers, book chapters, and published abstracts on muscle sports nutrition, supplementation, and resistance training for bodybuilders and strength athletes. And what's cool, you guys, is he's a scientist, but he speaks like a normal person. So you'll be able to understand what he's talking about today. So here's a few of the topics that we talk about. One, we talk about, first of all, his background, him growing up, but some studies that he has published. And so one of them is, does eating frequently increase fat loss? So does more meals per day, is that better for your metabolism or worse? And so we talk about both sides of that. Do strength athletes or people that want to put on muscle need carbs to grow muscle? We talk about cheating clean versus eating unhealthy cheat meals, right, if you will. You can say whatever you want about, call it cheat meals. You can just call it unhealthy food or whatever. We talk about that. We talk about, can you trick your body to think it's full, and the power of the placebo effect. All kinds of topics. We talk about calories in versus calories out, if it fits your macros. All these topics that I'm interested in. I know a lot of my followers are interested in, so you'll definitely want to stay tuned to listen in with Dr. Jacob Wilson. But before, we have to give a shout out to our show sponsors. Once again, our sponsors for today's show is everlywell.com. Definitely check out Everlywell if you want to get your blood work done. Instead of going into a doctor's office and making appointments and getting a ton of blood drawn, you can do it from the convenience of your own home through Everlywell. Everlywell allows you to go online to their website, everlywell.com. You can use my URL, everlywell.com/fit-to-fat-to-fit. And you'll get a 10% off discount code. You can test things like your hormones, testosterone, estrogen, your thyroid, your cortisol levels. You can also test your blood lipid profile. You can test for food sensitivities. You can test for heavy metals. All kinds of different blood tests you can do. So basically, you go to their website, you order the test you want, they send it to your door, you open up the box, there's all the instructions and equipment in there you need. It's just usually a prick of the finger or a urine test for most of them. You don't need to draw any blood. Other than just the prick of the finger, and you put it in the sample and you send it off via UPS. It's a prepaid package, or you can schedule pickup. It's so convenient. It's affordable, and it's the future of getting your blood work done, because so many people struggle with getting their blood work done because it's inconvenient. They have to make doctor's appointments, and it just takes a while. So this makes it so much easier. So go check out everlywell.com/fit-to-fat-to-fit. Our next show sponsor is none other than Quest Nutrition. Now, Quest Nutrition has been a show sponsor for a long time now. We love these guys. They are at the forefront of making healthy food taste good. They do an awesome job. They've done it with their protein bars for years now. They do it with their protein chips, their protein powders. Now they even have keto food as well. If you go to questketo.com, you can find all their lineup of keto products, things like peanut butter cups, chocolate bars, Cheez-Its crackers that are keto friendly, frozen meals that are keto friendly, keto desserts. It's amazing what they've done to make all this healthy food taste good. So check them out at questnutrition.com or questketo.com. We're definitely proud to have them on as a sponsor of the show. All right, let's go and hang out with Dr. Jacob Wilson now. Jake, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
Oh, great. Everything's going great, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, man, it's my pleasure, honestly, and I've wanted to have you on for a long time now, to be honest with you. So I'm glad that we finally made it happen. And just to forewarn you, I am on day 4 of a 7-day fast. So if my brain kind of gets foggy, that's why.
Nice, man. How's it going?
It's going good. I'm just doing water, bone broth, and exogenous ketones, to be honest with you. And actually today, day 4, was like a breakthrough day where my mind felt so much more clear and I felt energized. I even did some push-ups this morning.
And have the ketones helped compared to past fasts?
So this is my first fast, and that's why I used the ketones the first time around. Maybe next time I'll do them without ketones to see how it goes. But I definitely think it helps because honestly, I think the caffeine withdrawals were the hardest part in days 1 and day 2.
Got it.
But anyways, I'm feeling good, man. You feeling good?
Feeling great, man. I can't complain.
Okay, you're not fasting right now, are you?
I'm actually intermittent fasting, so I don't eat till like after probably about 2 hours from now.
Okay, cool. And that's kind of what I did to help prepare my body to do this fast. Was I didn't just jump in, doing 6 meals a day with a lot of carbs to all of a sudden 7 days of fasting. I did, intermittent fasting beforehand for a long period of time, actually. So I think that helped me.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get in. I kind of want to introduce you to my followers and your background a little bit. My first question for you is, you're a doctor. When you tell people that you're a doctor, what kind of doctor do you tell people you are? What do you tell them your job description is?
Well, great question. So basically, I have a PhD in skeletal muscle physiology. I'm a scientist, and what I do is, I'm CEO of Applied Science and Performance Institute. That's ASPI, or Applied Science and Performance Institute. It's a 21,000 square foot facility that essentially it has, to be honest, it's the most technologically advanced laboratory for body composition and human performance in the world. There's nothing it doesn't have. There's nothing we can't look at. There's no question that, as far as science is concerned, that we can't look into with it. So it's pretty cool. So if some of you guys, if you've watched like stuff like Generation Iron, that was my older laboratory, and then now again everything here is really state of the art. So, but we study the boundaries of human performance and body composition 24/7. That's what we do here with elite athletes, all the way to just the normal guy or girl who just wants to optimize themselves.
Yeah, so I remember I was out there a couple months ago and I was just fascinated by the place, first of all, the amount of technology you guys have there. And you guys work with a lot of, high-end professional athletes, right? So they'll come out there and do some testing with you guys, right?
Yeah, we work with professional NFL, major leaguers. We do all the sports science for the Tampa Lightning, and a lot of different, some fighters. A lot of different athletes come in through here, and we're basically we take the guesswork out of programming for them, because we actually can analyze them and go, all right, here's your weak points, here's your strengths, and here's what we're going to do. It's not like I think. It's like, here's what the science says.
That's so cool, man. So how did you get into all this? What was your passion growing up? So tell us kind of your origin story of how you got to this point.
At origin, yes. It's like the X-Men. So
yes.
So all right. So basically, I started off as a kid, and like my dad always said, like he was always about changing the world and helping people, and that's always what we were taught. And he always stressed. He said education was a method that we could do for that, and so he always stressed education. And the thing for me is, when I was a kid, I must have been like 5 or 6 or something. My dad got me, my parents got me like a lab coat and like a little like chemistry set. Oh,
it's funny, man.
Yeah, dude. And I knew from that moment that like I wanted to be a scientist. Now, granted, I also knew I wanted to be a professional hockey player and boxer.
Yeah.
And I pursued all 3 of those things, and I did end up boxing and fighting, all the way through like the beginning of college, and then I ended up playing hockey, and I went and played hockey in Canada, and semi-pro, semi-pro in Canada, and I was always a little guy, like just, not the biggest guy, 5'8". Everyone, all the average height there was 6 foot, and maybe 150 pounds at the time. And it's hard for me to put on size. And so I just started studying, like, how do you do this? How do you put on size? How do you put on mass? And how do you get faster, stronger? And I became fascinated with that. And I said, well, that's what I want to do in the realm of science. So basically, I ended up going to school, and I got my BS degree in performance nutrition science. I did 2 masters, one in sports psychology, one in exercise physiology, and I did my doctorate in skeletal muscle physiology. Came out of my doctorate, started a lab at University of Tampa for several years, and then left and built this facility. Along the way, I probably done a couple hundred experiments and published close to 200 papers, book chapters, abstracts, presented all around the world on this topic, and fairly recently won Young Investigator of the Year award for NSCA. So so it's a lot of stuff, basically, again. But my whole passion, and this is why I like following your stuff so much, and Drew and also Craig's stuff, is because I think all 3 of us really have a goal to take stuff that's more complicated and turn it to English. Yeah, exactly. That's why my origin today, why would I step out of academics? I like academics, but scientists only talk to themselves. They can only understand themselves. They speak in a language. It's like if I went to Brazil, I don't speak Portuguese, so I'm not going to be able to understand anything there. Well, science, without looking it up every 5 seconds, scientists speak a whole other language. And my whole contention was speak English. You know what I mean? And that's what I do, is I try and take complex information and turn it to English so that everyone can benefit from it.
Yeah. And that's what I noticed. That's what I love about the studies that you put out there, is it's super applicable stuff to your average person that, it's so relatable to, even me and other people, my followers. It's the type of stuff we want to know. But yet, like you're talking about, scientists speak a different language, and it's hard to understand, okay, does this mean this? Is that what they're saying by this study? What are they saying exactly? And that's why I love your studies. If people just followed you on Instagram, they would be blown away at the stuff you put out there, because it's so relatable to your average person, and almost everybody can understand it. And we'll get into those studies in a little bit, but I'm so glad that you talked about that, because I think it's so important, and I think I see that disconnect between your average person and the latest research that's out there. And that's why so many of your average Americans rely on these studies to be like, okay, well, what are we doing? Where are we going? What does this mean? And they just are totally, what's the word I'm looking for? They succumb to that is their kind of scripture, I guess you could say, know? Exactly. But if they don't understand it, then it's like, well, then I guess I'll just keep doing what I'm doing.
Exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's awesome, man. I kind of wanted to go back and talk about your history a little bit. You mentioned you studied performance nutrition. I'm curious to know what that looked like then versus what your current nutritional philosophy is, and is that
good question?
Yeah, to see how it's evolved since then.
Well, a big passion of mine is body composition, and a lot of bodybuilding and stuff like that. I've done a lot of stuff with, and of course, you relating to that, you've made some phenomenal transformations in yourself and really thousands of people in their bodies. And so back then, my major philosophy was and this is a long time ago, but the major rating thing was, well, if you don't eat fat, if you go low fat, you can't get fat. Stoke the furnace with as many meals as you can.
Yeah.
And I think that was the main thing, is go as low fat as you can. And like I said, stoke the furnace with as many high meal frequencies you possibly can have. And fat is evil. And I think that's what was a reigning principle when I started studying.
But you were a believer in that at that time, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like I can remember, like I would if I was cooking meat, I would like take the spatula and like press the meat out of it, press the fat out of it in the pan, and like move it away. Like, no, bad, get away. So, and I also noticed that like when I dieted, man, my hormones were like plummeted. And I was like, what's going on, right? Well, so how has that changed today? I think now we know that fat is great in the context of the right metabolic environment. So basically it's like, well, sure, if I go to, why do people think fat's bad? Because you go to McDonald's or you eat a whole pizza, it's got tons of fat. It causes cardiovascular disease. Yeah, McDonald's does cause cardiovascular disease. So does eating a pizza every night that's from Domino's. That's correct. However, what's the difference? The difference is that's high carb, high fat at the same time. But when you lower carbohydrates, fat just gets used as fuel, and it helps repair things, and it helps your hormones be optimized. So I think the main take-home message that what's changed is that dieting's relative to metabolic state. Fat can be very important for you, and as long as fat is not in the presence of a high amount of carbs, it has tons of benefits, including satiation, including fat loss, including energy and focus. So that's kind of definitely one thing that's changed a lot for me. Not that you can't be on a higher carb diet. I'm not saying that's bad. It depends on your metabolic state and what you can handle. But what I am saying is that I don't think very, very low-fat diets are ideal.
Yeah. No, I was just curious because here you are, a doctor studying this and, even a believer in it. And so was I. And so were so many of us. We kind of just rely on the science that's out there thinking, okay, this is the way it is. So this is what we got to go off of. And it really affected all of us, right? So, but then here we are today with, more up-to-date scientific studies showing us that we were wrong. Like that it wasn't true. And exactly. I still have a tough time, and you probably run into this too, of convincing people, look, I promise you eating fat isn't going to make you fat. It's not bad for you. Exactly. But people still have that mentality.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah. So, okay, I kind of want to dive into some of the unique studies that you do because we talked about them briefly and how they're so relatable. So if we have time to get to all of them, great. If not, no worries. The first one I kind of want to start out with actually is one that you post. So here's the thing for all you guys listening. Dr. Jake, he puts these on Instagram and talks about them in depth, right? He puts them in an image, which is really cool, and kind of busts some myths, if you will, about nutrition or exercise sometimes. So the first one is, does eating frequently increase fat loss? So can you talk about this study, how you guys set it up, and what were the results of that one?
Yeah, Bill, basically, eating frequently doesn't enhance fat loss. And I think that's huge because I said that was one of the things that I talked about was one of the things I believed. I honestly believe, like, hey, every time I eat, you're going to stoke the furnace, and it doesn't. And in actuality, the one thing is you may actually counter long-term fat loss, and I'll tell you why. Basically, what it comes down to is like this. So for you guys out there listening, say that you set your alarm for 7 a.m. every single morning, okay? Now, pretty soon, if you don't set your alarm, you're going to wake up at 7 a.m., right? Probably even 6:58. So your body basically is programmed to set alarms for habits that you do. It's just its own circadian sort of rhythm, biorhythms. Well, similar, we have like these clock genes inside of our bodies that if I were to wake up and I eat breakfast, let's say I ate breakfast at 7, and then I ate again at 10, then I ate again at noon, and then I ate again at 3:30. Well, what happened is, even if my body didn't need food, that alarm would go off at 10 in the morning and go, Jacob, you're starving. You need to eat. And so the one problem with high meal frequency we found is that you set up these sort of clock genes, you program them to where you're always hungry. And what we've also found is that basically, let's say that, for example, like I'm intermittent fasting, I usually don't eat till like 1 in the afternoon. I'm not hungry till around 1. I don't wake up in the morning and go, oh my God, I got to eat. Whereas before, when I woke up and ate breakfast every single morning, I was like, I can't even think unless you know what I mean? So I think that's where we know calories are important for fat loss. They're not everything, no matter what anyone says, but they're important, a very, very important component. And the fact is, if I'm eating less frequently, I have a better chance of sticking with my calorie load. So I actually think that lowering meal frequency can be one of the best. And there's a lot of studies showing this now, that lowering meal frequency can actually be better for fat loss than high meal frequency.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So basically what you're saying in a nutshell is our bodies adjust to whatever we tell it to do. So if we create a habit of eating twice a day, our bodies will adjust to that. And yes, there's a transitional period where we're used to eating 6 times a day. That alarm is like, hey, it's time to eat. But then once you get used to it, your body will adjust to whatever alarms you create for it, right? So, for example, I noticed that doing my 7-day fast, I'm on day 4. Day 1, day 2 were kind of hard. It's like, okay, it's nighttime. You're used to eating at least 1 meal a day at night, and at nighttime have been struggles for me. But day 4, I feel like, man, now my body is waking up. I feel energized today finally, and not as sluggish. And so your bodies are amazing creations, and they will adjust to it. So,
100%.
And you know, I talk to a lot of people kind of in the bodybuilding industry that think, oh, I can't do that because then I'll lose my gains and my metabolism will slow down. They're so freaked out by change.
And that's not the case. It's actually there's actually studies where the number, like Ramadan, where they'll basically intermittent fast, and they're only eating like for maybe like a 8-hour period of the day, 9-hour period of the day. And they can gain muscle, and they don't lose muscle dieting at all. So I think that what I will say is this. For fat loss and muscle gain, it's probably, if someone's doing like the intermittent fasting, probably constraining the fasting or the eating period to 9 hours, you can gain all the muscle you want. Once you limit it to 1 meal a day, I think that you may be able to maintain muscle, but it would be more difficult to gain. And the more advanced athletes sometimes have a hard time putting on size, but like, say I'm like, I need to go on a hardcore cut. 1 meal a day may be good for maintenance. If I need to gain, you probably should do the 9 hours per day eating period. I think you can gain just as much muscle on that as you could eating 6 to 8 times a day. And there's some evidence that periodizing your meals is also good, just like periodizing your training. So maybe it's like, okay, say you're doing like you want to go on a mass cycle and you've been only eating 8 hours a day and fasting 16. Maybe if you went a few weeks with higher meal frequency, you'd notice a large amount of muscle gain, but then your body would adapt to that and you go then back to the fat loss 9 hours. So that's my kind of thoughts.
Interesting, man. This is all such good stuff, and I know there's a lot of valuable information here for all of us to take away. Well, let's jump into the next one then, because that kind of leads into the next study you guys did. And a lot of people think this too. To gain muscle, you need carbs. And I know that there are studies now that have shown that's not true. Can you talk to that? Because I know that's still stuck in people's mind. Okay, I need to bulk up, so I need to eat a lot of carbs to put on muscle. Yeah,
let me say this, and this is going to sound strange. People ask me, do you need carbs to train hard? Do you need carbs to grow? Do you need carbs? Because the concept basically is that, like, when you lift in like a 8 to 12 repetition range, the main fuel, a large fuel source you use is carbohydrates. So they go, do you need carbs? And I go, yeah, you do need carbs. And they go, oh, okay, well, why do you go so low carb? I go, you need them. You just don't need to obtain carbs from your diet because your body can make them.
That's the key right there.
That's the key, my friend. What we basically found is that when people go on a ketogenic diet, after they adapt, their muscle carbohydrate stores are the same as if they were eating carbs all day.
That's huge.
It's huge. And people ask, well, wait, if you don't have carbs, how can you have carbohydrates in your muscle? I go, well, if you don't have fat, how can you gain fat? You know what I'm saying? Yet we all know that if I were to eat 500 carbs today and virtually no fat, I would put on a lot of fat. Your body can make what it needs. And so the point is, the question is, do you need to have carbs from your diet to gain muscle? The answer is astoundingly no. In fact, and then the next question is, can you gain just as much muscle without carbs in your diet as you can if you had carbs? And the answer is yes. And so our lab was the first lab to study resistance trained athletes on a ketogenic diet where they're eating like 30 grams of carbs a day. 75% of their diet was fat. 20 to 25% was protein. They gained just as much muscle as if you were on carbs. And we looked at molecular level. We published a study in Journal of Applied Physiology with Dr. Mike Roberts. Again, first lab to look at protein synthesis and molecular signaling. Stimulated just as much protein synthesis in the muscle. And yet we also just published another paper on ketogenic dieting compared to a high-carb diet, and actually training with a ketogenic diet. Not only do you stimulate as much protein synthesis, but you actually improve mitochondria more. And mitochondria is your fat-burning furnace. You increase more mitochondria. So metabolically, the benefits you're getting may surpass a high-carbohydrate diet. So yes, you can gain just as much muscle. Absolutely. No, you don't need carbs in your diet to grow. And yes, lowering carbohydrates may have a lot of beneficial effects on mitochondria.
Interesting. So let me ask you this, because I get asked this a lot, and I kind of want to hear your answer to this. When it comes to fat loss, is a calorie a calorie? Does it just come down to how many calories you're putting in versus how many calories you put out or you burn through the day? Is that the ultimate formula for fat loss? No matter if you're keto, no matter if you're eating vegan or if you're eating a high carb diet, is it all just come down to calories in versus calories out?
Short answer, no. And the main thing is, or let me say this, calories in affect calories out. And so, and that's one thing that the point too, like for example, like if someone's eating vegan and their protein is not optimal and they lose muscle mass, that's going to affect calories out. If someone's eating vegan and their protein is not optimal and they don't stimulate protein synthesis as much, which requires energy, their calories out will be lower. So I think that calories in drastically affect the calorie out equation. But the main thing is that I would say in short, no. And there are some people who probably burn me at the stake for saying that. But the thing is, I'm telling you right now, no. Like there's lots of studies that demonstrate that, your macronutrient distribution is an important factor when it comes to fat loss. My other thing, Drew, that really gets at me is everyone's like, well, if calories are the same, then, does it matter? Let's say we accepted that, which it's not true, but let's say we accepted that. Diet, in large part, is going to determine how many calories you do take in. And what I mean by that is, for example, ketogenic dieting is extremely satiating. You're not as hungry. So sometimes people go, first off, I think there's evidence that ketogenic dieting does have a metabolic advantage. Okay. I do think that you could lose more fat on a calorie per calorie basis, particularly if you're insulin resistant. Okay. That being said, let's say that was not true. People go, and I accepted that, and they go, well, the only reason ketogenic dieting works is it improves your satiety, and you don't want to eat as much. All right, you just told me that calories in versus calories out is the most important thing, and that this diet allows you to actually have less calories because you're not as hungry. To me, you win either way. So, my major point is that, all right, so if calories are the most important thing, you're saying keto doesn't work, it doesn't have a metabolic advantage, and yet you're telling me that it makes you not want to eat as much and that you're now in control of what you eat. Well, isn't that what everyone wants? So, I think that it's not as easy to stick to a diet. If everyone would just write a diet on paper and go, oh, I'm going to stick to these calories, great. But you can't. So the diet itself is going to determine your satiety, and the satiety and those control mechanisms will allow you to follow that diet. So that's my overall thoughts.
Interesting. So it also comes down to the quality of those calories instead of just the quantity. Kind of like if I ate donuts for carbs and ate Crisco for fat and, had some kind of low quality protein. I don't know, but
100%.
Yeah.
Like, this thing in, like, for example, the concept of if it fits your macros is basically like a carbohydrate's a carbohydrate. So if I get my carbs from donuts or from broccoli, there's going to be no difference. That's false. Or if, it doesn't matter as long as I hit my macros on protein. There's tons of data showing that different protein sources have different impacts on your body. A macro is not a macro. Your body does determine differences between carbohydrates. I mean, take fats, for example. Medium chain triglycerides are going to respond totally different than Crisco would, And so there are short chain fatty acids that are in butter that are going to be, you'll have a much different ketogenic response than if you didn't have that. Like fish oil, which is high in essential fatty acids, are going to have several different metabolic effects that you're not going to get, for example, when you eat a steak, even though steak's great. I'm just saying, my point is that it's not just if it fits your macros. It's far more complex than that. I think that having flexibility is great, but saying, my whole diet, people will take it to a whole new level and go, oh, it doesn't matter, so the only thing I'm going to eat is Pop-Tarts and donuts and pizza. Well, I get flexibility. I do think flexibility is an important tool, but taking it to those extremes makes zero sense to me at all.
Yeah. I think the problem with that, though, is we see people who have remarkable physiques doing these routines, right? And they get six packs, they get shredded, right? So they're like, oh, well, then it must be healthy. But I preach all the time, there's a difference between being healthy and having a six pack or even being skinny. That doesn't equate to health all the time. So you don't realize the damage you're doing to the insides of your body, how it affects your hormones. Even though you might look great on the outside, that's not always optimal.
Well, and I think this is one of the reasons why I will reference people to your brand so much, because if you look at you, like your body, if you're in great shape, but if you go and eat garbage, you're going to gain fat.
Yeah.
You're just like me. You're just like, the guys over in the lab next to me. Like it's not like we don't have superior genetics. We have to work hard. And most people fall into that realm. So it's like the problem is you'll have someone preaching like, oh, you can eat Pop-Tarts and donuts and become shredded. Look at this pro athlete, right? Well, there's a reason why they're pro. They have the top 1% genetics in the world. And they can, they can diet. They could go from, I have like elite athletes who are like in the top 1%, and basically their contest prep is 4 weeks out. Instead of having 2 boxes of Oreos, they'll go to 1 box. And, and then 2 weeks out, they'll go to 1 sleeve. And I'm like, yeah. So, but then people like us who, we got normal genes, we go, oh, well, if he's doing that and look how jacked he is, that must mean it works. Look how, it's just that doesn't work that way. Michael Jordan can dunk from half court, doesn't mean that I can, right?
That's so true, man. That's why I love your philosophy and what you preach, because it's very similar to me, and that's why I tell people all the time, you need to become your own self-experimentation. So yeah, it's okay to try out these other diets, but you need to find what's optimal for you. So that includes testing your body composition on a regular basis, keeping a journal of what you're eating, getting your blood work done on a regular basis as well, so you know what is optimal for you, because different things are going to work differently for different people. And I know I said a lot of different in there, but it's true. And so that's why we need to become our own self-experimentations to find out what's optimal for us. So anyways, let's get into the next study. This was an interesting one. Can you trick your body to think it's full?
Yeah,
so this one was really interesting.
Yeah, the answer is, so they did a study. And all right, so I'll explain to everyone listening. Let's say that say I was like talking with you, Drew, and into our lab. You're like, hey, I'm going to train. Can I have, say you're telling me, okay, I want to get shredded, so I want to have the fat loss shake. So I tell my guys at the fuel bar station, hey, can you get Drew a fat loss shake? And so they get you one, and say it's 150 calories, and you drink it. And then I play a trick on you, and I'm like, hey, Drew, sorry, buddy, I made a mistake. The guys just told me that I grabbed the weight gainer shake. And that weight gainer shake was actually like 1,200 calories. So you're like, oh, man. So, but anyway, what ended up happening is that the hormones that get released into the blood from your stomach that make you hungry, the hormones that make you hungry, because I told you ate a heavier meal, would lower more. Even though the calories were the same. But if I would have told you, hey, Drew, this is a low-calorie shake, and you're probably going to be really hungry after, your hunger hormones would actually skyrocket. So the point is, like, the way you think about a meal, the way you think about food will actually determine in large part your hunger hormone response. So say someone's like, I'm going to diet. Say I'm going to diet, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to be deprived. I know that. This meal's not going to make me full. It's going to suck. I'm going to have to suffer. Your hormones will actually respond in kind. So what the take-home message is that, like, when you're eating, you can tell your body, like, oh, I'm excited about this meal. It's going to make me feel full. It's going to make me feel great. It's going to give me the nourishment that I need. Your hunger hormones it will actually respond in kind.
Interesting. So it's almost kind of like the placebo effect. If you tell yourself this is what it is, your body will believe that and adjust to that, even though the macronutrient breakdown is different.
Correct. Absolutely. And that's the thing about the placebo effect is, like, people will say, like, oh, this pill doesn't do nothing. And people say, yeah, I actually gained a lot of muscle on it or whatever. But bottom line is that what we tell ourselves impacts so much. And, like, I know, like, when you and Craig come up here and you guys are training, like, there's a passion there, but there's also a belief that you're going to make gains. And people don't understand that belief drives a lot of the response that we have. And maybe some of it is physiological. Maybe if I think I'm going to make better gains in the weight room, maybe my hormones adapt to give me better gains. So remember, guys who are listening, the way you think about things drives a response. If I think negatively, I'll have a negative emotional response. That a negative emotional response will cause hormones and physiological changes that will be negative on my body. And so think positively, change things up, mentally.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, because that kind of stuff isn't always measured in science and isn't always taught in science, because you can't really measure it. And it's like, well, we can't explain that. But it's so true, though. And I just talked about this morning on social media, the power of things like positive affirmations. Saying positive words to yourself really do affect you at the cellular level. And there's studies that show if you speak positive words, for example, to living things like a plant or water even, versus negative words, that it creates an impact on those living things, those organisms. And it's very powerful stuff, and people don't really, look into that. They don't believe it. They're like, oh, that's too easy. That can't happen. Versus, I promise you, if you do it, it will make a difference. So,
here's the thing. Like, I work with a lot of professional athletes, and I'll ask, say I'm working with a basketball player, say, how much did you dribble today? Oh, like an hour. How many jump shots you take today? I took like 1,000. Then I go, how much did you work on your mental game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yet in a game, what is it when someone chokes? That's mental, right? Why is it that today I'm doing great and 2 days from now I'm like, I can't make a shot? What's the difference? Is it that did 48 hours make that much of a difference? And so I do think that focusing, we call it psychological skills training, is absolutely essential to everything.
Yeah. That's so true, man. Thanks for talking about that. Let's get into the next one. This one's really interesting too. Can cheating clean, right? So basically what he means by that is eating healthier cheat meals, I guess, help us avoid binge eating unhealthier foods?
Great question. So basically, here's the thing. So when I eat, there's a thing, satiation is essentially like when I stop wanting to eat a food or when I'm done with my meal. And so let's say you started a meal and you're eating steak, for example, which I love, but like if you eat the steak, the first bite's good, the second bite's good, third bite's good, and if I eat the whole steak, it's great. But if you gave me another steak, don't get me wrong, I'd eat it. But, but it's the second steak's not quite as good as the first one, even though it's the same steak. And what's that? Basically, that's called sensory specific satiation. That when I eat something that tastes good, I get pleasure hormones being released in my brain, and it's called dopamine. And basically, I eat something that tastes good, I get this dopamine response that makes me feel good. Now, what ends up happening is that as I continue to eat, that dopamine response gets less and less and less. But let's say that, Drew, I was eating that steak, and all of a sudden you gave me bacon. Now, the thing is that when I eat that bacon, it's going to be like I will get the dopamine response because it's so different from the steak. So there's a thing called a transfer of satiety effects. And basically what that means, like, say that I were to eat a sirloin, or I were to eat a filet, center cut filet, and after that steak you gave me a sirloin. Technically they're different, but I wouldn't get as much of a dopamine response from the sirloin because it's so similar. So with cheating clean, let's say that I like peanut butter cups a lot, and so but there are foods that are like cheat clean, like Quest Nutrition makes a keto peanut butter cup now, and they also make the Quest Cravings, and so. Basically, we did an experiment where we took like those Quest Cravings. It was just a pilot study. We took the Quest Cravings peanut butter cups and had individual eat them compared to like something that was different, like say like clean chicken, and the wanting, like how much you wanted the Reese's peanut butter cup was less after eating the cheat clean peanut butter cup, the healthy peanut butter cup, than like if you ate the healthy chicken. Because what happens is that, like, or for example, I just made a cheesecake, a low carb cheesecake that was actually pretty low calorie for our lab today. And a lot of the guys like, I would take this over the normal cheesecake, and yet it's healthy, it's low calorie, it's low carb. So their desire to want the normal cheesecake is less. So what happens is people think that they need to torture themselves in order to get results, but you can make things that are healthy where you're, quote, cheating clean, and that will lower your desire for good foods. Whereas if, like, say someone's dieting, and they're like, well, if I'm going to diet, I got to suffer, so I'm only going to eat chicken and tilapia, or I'm going to eat tilapia and green beans and asparagus my whole contest prep. When exposed to cheesecake or Reese's, they're more likely to binge and go out of control. And that's the point, is like, you can eat healthy and make alternative recipes that are clean, and it will lower your desire to eat unhealthy foods.
Yeah, man. See, that's the kind of stuff I love that you guys do, is you do these real life situations, like applicable studies like this that people have questions about, but no one's out there putting in the time or effort to do studies on this because I don't know why, but it's just so cool that you guys are doing unique studies like this that people have real life questions to, and it's really cool. Okay, the next one is, let's talk about, this one's kind of controversial, but higher ketone levels, does that equal higher fat loss? Or do higher ketone levels don't really mean anything versus if you had 1 millimolar of blood ketones versus 3 or 4?
Yeah, so Ryan Lowry in our lab likes to say, should we chase ketones? And here's the thing. Let me preface this by saying, do I think ketones by themselves are beneficial? The answer is yes. I think ketones themselves can improve satiety. I think ketones themselves may actually enhance fat metabolism. I think ketones are a superior energy source to any other energy source that we know of. I think that they can be anti-inflammatory. There's evidence that they can be anti-aging. So I'll start with that. But the question is, are ketones in your blood on your diet an indicator of how successful you are in ketogenic dieting? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer that question like this. When someone is like a type 2 diabetic, what's the number one diagnosis for being a type 2 diabetic? The answer is very high blood glucose levels. So normally if we're fasting, our blood glucose levels may be like 80 milligrams per deciliter to 100 milligrams per deciliter. So if someone wakes up in the morning and their blood glucose is like 300, okay, they don't jump up and down and do cartwheels and go, yes, like I'm carb adapted, things are going great. No, their doctor says you have type 2 diabetes. And so with ketones, the question, what reflects blood ketone levels is how much I'm using versus how much I'm producing. And so say someone's like, we're on the diet and someone else's ketone levels are like 3.5 millimolars and mine are, 1 or 0.5. Does that mean that person is more successful than me? Maybe not. It may mean that I can use them more effectively than he or she can. And so the point is, what you'll know you're keto adapted based on, in other words, if you're like, I can only get my ketones to 0.3, 0.5, this diet's not working for me. No, it might mean that you just utilize ketones great. And what's going to tell you if you're adapted is, do you have clarity? Are you focused? Is your performance great? And that's going to tell you if you're adapted. So do I think ketones are amazing? Yeah, I think they're the most efficient fuel in our body. But does blood ketone levels necessarily mean that you're doing better on your diet than someone else? No, it just means that person might be using more than you. Now, I'm not telling you having 3 millimolars is bad. Maybe you produce a lot and use a lot. I'm just saying that I wouldn't chase ketones. I chase the euphoria that the diet gives you.
Yeah, that's great advice. So it's not the end all be all if your ketones are high, or you're not failing if they're low. So that's actually really good advice for a lot of people that do the keto diet, and they'll see different results on their blood ketone levels. So I think that's great, man. Okay, we're running out of time, but before we go, Jake, I kind of had some rapid fire questions for you, if that's okay, and then we'll wrap it up, man. Okay, and you can be honest with me. What is your favorite unhealthy cheat meal?
I would say donuts or cookies and ice cream.
Okay, and you're talking about real donuts, not like protein donuts.
Real donuts, or like pizza.
Okay,
that's my top 3.
And how often do you let yourself indulge in those things?
I mean, for example, like if it's Christmas time, or Thanksgiving and someone made a dish, I'll try it. I'll try it out. I'm not like terrified of it or anything like that. So I'd say usually anytime there's like a special occasion, it's just that like I make so many recipes and baking all the time, and I have like Andy Barnier assessed like background in culinary. So I don't it's kind of like that transfer effect. So I don't have to do it as much. I don't desire it as much. When we're around, I'll try it out.
And what's your favorite cheat clean meal that you guys have come up with? That cheesecake sounds good.
I'm obsessed with cheesecake. My favorite cheat clean meal is So basically, I take burgers and I'll make a cauliflower pizza. I'll cut that up into like a bun. And I'll take a big, fat, juicy burger and bacon and use the pizza as the bun. It's the greatest thing I've ever eaten in my life, to be honest with you.
That is awesome, man. It's crazy what we can come up with to make it keto, Like, I want a bacon pizza burger.
Unreal.
It's so cool. Okay, are you married? Do you have kids?
Yeah, no kids. So,
okay.
Yeah, I do have two cats. Mercedes.
2 cats.
Yeah.
Okay. Do they eat keto? You make your cats eat keto or no?
Actually, so Diego is actually, I have him. He had a weight problem. He was gaining a lot of fat, and he always wanted to eat. So I actually had him intermittent fast. So he's on time constrained feeding now, and he's
wow.
he's getting lean, man. He had no face before, and now I could see it.
That is so funny, man. I've never heard of someone doing that for their cat, intermittent fasting.
Yeah, exactly.
And what about your wife? Does she eat keto, or what kind of routine does she follow?
It's on and off. So sometimes she does, but she usually eats low carb.
Gotcha. Okay. And have you ever been overweight before?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I actually have. Like, especially as a kid, I was a really fat, chubby kid. Even though I did a lot of sports and stuff, I have a tendency, I'm very when I'm really cut, I look ectomorphic, but my body responds like an endomorph. And so as a kid, I was really like chubby kid. Like I said, I played a lot of sports and stuff, but I carried a lot of fat. So yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So I'm curious to know if you would ever try a fit experiment, keto style, to see if you could gain, weight and then lose the weight, but in a keto version of it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. The thing is, as a scientist, I'll do anything. I will do anything on myself. So I'm a curious type of person, and whatever I'm like interested in, I'll usually experiment on myself. Sometimes that turns out good. Sometimes that is absolutely disastrous. So that's why like my body will change a lot. And I'm like, why did I do that to myself? I got to see. Test it on yourself, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've done some pretty crazy bulks myself that I really wish I had not in the past.
Yeah, no, it's interesting thinking about doing this again. I don't know if I could. It was so hard, man, to be honest with you. I don't know if I could mentally put myself in that place again, even though knowing it was short term and I'm doing it for science, but it's hard, that was like one of the hardest things I've ever done. So
it's so hard mentally, dude. I'm at the point where like it's so hard to diet that I don't want to have to do it more than I have to,
Exactly. Okay. So, a couple other questions. Who do you go to for inspiration? Who's like your mentor?
My dad, like for sure. Floyd Wilson is who I go to for inspiration. Like even now, I still call my dad and ask for advice. And my colleagues, my team they're really just like, I have so many people. Ryan Lowry, you know Ryan.
Yeah.
I go to him for inspiration. All my staff I have on my staff, like guy named Matt Sharp is like my director of research here. I go to him all the time. Andrew Barninger. There's so many people like, or if it's like biomechanics, I'll go to a guy in our lab named William Wallace. Like anytime there's
that's his name,
William Wallace.
Wow, he's back.
Yeah. So, but I go to the people who are like really close to me. You and Craig, I'll come to you for advice. Having really good friends that you can reach out to on any time is the number one thing for me. And I've been blessed and fortunate to have that in my life.
Okay. And what's your latest favorite book that you've read recently?
Latest favorite books? It's a really, really good question. There's actually, it's like a, you're going to laugh.
Why?
I don't read novels, but I just read like Three Musketeers.
Oh, wow. That's so funny.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is freaking awesome. I like classic novels, and I don't have enough chance to read them. And so, like, I do go to the classics a lot.
Nice,
so I've read that. It's like, it's kind of like a guy's book. They fight, they kill people,
That is awesome, man.
No, dude. So, yeah, that was probably my latest favorite book that I read. But there's some good ketogenic books out there. Jason Fung just came out with a book called that's about fasting, and I read that, and that was, as far as like a science book, I thought that was really good.
Yeah, is that the Complete Guide to Fasting with Jimmy Moore?
Yeah, Jason Fung, yeah, it was phenomenal.
Yeah, that was really good. I just had Jimmy on my podcast last week.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, yeah, man.
Yeah, Jimmy's his book Keto Clarity, I would say, is phenomenal as well.
Oh yeah, and I send people to that book all the time when they want to know like just the basics of what keto is and what it does. So, well, cool, man. I'll let you go, Jake. I really appreciate you coming on. But before I let you go, where can people find you on social media, your website, and all that?
Thank you. Yes. So my social media is at The Muscle PhD. So The Muscle PhD, I have Facebook. I also have Instagram. I do Twitter, but it's kind of not my favorite platform. But and Snapchat. So like if you guys want to see like stuff in the lab and me doing random experiments, check me out on Snapchat. But it's The Muscle PhD. But again, thanks for having me on the show, Drew. Really appreciate it. I recommend you all the time to all my friends and people watching, and you're doing phenomenal things, man. So thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thank you. And just so everyone knows, Dr. Jake puts out so much free content. It's amazing. He does Facebook Live videos all the time, and he's throwing out these studies with explanations. He gives out so much free information. So definitely follow him on social media. All right, Dr. Jake, we'll have to have you on again in the future. Thanks again, though, man.
Okay, you bet.
Thank you guys so much for listening today and tuning in to the Fit to Fat to Fit Experience podcast. We really hope you enjoyed today's episode with Dr. Jacob Wilson and found this information useful. If so, please share it with your friends and family. Please subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us a good review if you like the podcast. If you don't, that's cool. Leave us a bad review, but tell us what we can do better. We're here to listen. We're here to improve. We're here to deliver high quality, valued content that you guys will be able to use to better your lives. And so we appreciate your feedback. Also, don't forget to check out our show sponsors, Quest Nutrition and everlywell.com. We really appreciate and we're proud to have them on as sponsors of the show. We wouldn't be able to do it without them. So definitely go check them out. Thank you guys once again for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my newsletter on my website, fit2fat2fit.com. You'll definitely want to stay in the know and always receive updates and deals that I have going on. So a lot of big things coming for 2017, so stay tuned, and really excited for this new year, and really excited that you guys are a part of this. So thank you for the support throughout all the years. Reach out to me on social media at fit2fat2fit on all social media platforms, and I'd love to hear from you guys. Stay in touch, and we'll be back next week with another great episode on the Fit to Fat to Fit Experience podcast.